I'm recording it now.
Okay. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
There you
Hey,
are.
Michael.
Sorry, I'm clicking all the right buttons. Fantastic to see both of you guys, and went through all the questions. And my thought was, I think you need to make this a series. There's so much that you're trying to pull out here. I don't know in the allotted time if I'm going to be able to get to all of it, but I am open to doing that. Thank you for inviting me to join you today. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what we get to in 30, 45 minutes. And if there's more, then yeah, second episode.
Oh, I booked 6 hours for this. No, like a Joe
Yeah,
Rogan
okay.
podcast, right?
Yeah.
All right. And then the last, how do we enable the chat?
I think we should be okay. Let's
We're not. Trustee Chrissy just messaged me and said it's disabled.
Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna go to. You can chat with people. I'll see. I don't think I can do it. See, we're all learning together.
Yeah, I see a chat, and I can I can say hello.
Yeah.
I think we can chat because we're co-hosts. I don't know if other people can chat.
Oh, got it.
Where do we go?
Hey everyone, we're just gonna take a few minutes to try and figure out some of these technical things. We can have the chat open, you can actively ask questions, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah.
You figured out last time.
Yeah.
Why do they want to hide it?
Oh. Oh. I think if you go to where it says participants.
Yep.
And there is the 3 dots on the bottom there.
I don't see those.
Oh.
Okay, wait. Attendees,
I
participants.
think you click everyone.
We had it last time. Hey, hold on, guys. We're having some fun. I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'll get started.
I'll figure it out while you guys do it.
Yep.
Oh, looks like it works.
Oh, snap.
Oh.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We have Michael Valdez, who is the co-founder and president of the Business Transition Council. He'll have an opportunity to share a little bit more about what that is. But from my experience and also being a member, it's a group of collaborative advisors that he is pulling together from the standpoint of collaboration. And he goes through and connects with each one who's wanting to be a member to ensure that they have 3 or 4 specific qualities that he will talk about to foster an environment where there's true teamwork and advisor collaboration as it relates to business advisory services. Also joining us is my partner in crime, Joe Gerard from Change, Grow, Achieve. Did I get those in the right order?
Got it. Perfect time.
Yeah. Sometimes my dyslexia comes out and rears its ugly head, but I got it right that time. And if it's the first time joining us on one of these webinars, we are part of the International Succession Planning Association, which is an organization focused solely on creating powerful education, actionable tools, and facilitation programs, as well as ongoing education, all for advisors who want to or are currently working with business owners and have an interest or wanting to grow their practice in the business transition, business succession, and or business value building space. The way that we look at succession planning is that it's success through any transition. It doesn't necessarily have to be ownership or leadership transition. It could be transitioning through changing the industry, change in economic environment, or growing the business from one size to another. So as we are all engaging in growing and sustaining our businesses, there are transitions that are happening almost every day. So with that, let's learn a little bit about Mr. Valdez. So Michael, could you please share your journey and what inspired you to start Business Transition Council?
I'd be glad to, but you mentioned something earlier about being dyslexic. In my first life, I was a special ed elementary school teacher, and people find it funny when they hear that I was a guy sitting on the floor with kids crawling all over him. But that's what I did in my 20s and in my very early 30s. An interesting statistic is I guess it's 1 out of 5 people nationally have been identified somewhere of having some form of learning differential or being learning divergent in some way. But when it comes to entrepreneurs and family business owners, that number is closer to a third. So there's something about the way the brain works that kind of inspires entrepreneurs of looking at things differently. I only know that because I discovered that while I was not a great student in school, that once I became a special ed teacher and started learning that, it turns out I fall into that same category. And a good example is last night I was at a bachata and salsa class, and of course they're teaching us steps. And in my mind, I'm looking right at them. I can see perfectly. I can hear the music, but I'm doing it opposite in my body. And I had to, oh, okay, I'm keeping up, but I'm doing this differently. So I have to rewire the brain. So this happens to me all the time. But anyway, a little over 40 years ago, 1983, I changed careers. I wanted to find something that allowed me to help people, make a difference, and really was going to be complex enough to allow me to sink my teeth into it over a long period of time. The other thing that encouraged me was as an elementary school teacher, I was kind of confined to space, and I really like being able to go out and see and meet people. And so being able to transition to becoming a financial advisor really helped me do that and see people in their own spaces. A little over 20 years ago, I started noticing that having worked with business owners at that point for probably 20 years and having worked with qualified plans and life insurance and investments and a whole series of these conversations, corporate benefits, that there was a real lack of collaboration for privately held and entrepreneurial business owners. And if you were a larger company, 100 to $300 million more of enterprise value and on up, there was a whole slew of consultants who, for substantial fees, would work collaboratively with that business owner and that family. And they really ranged all the way through the process of succession, exit, and transition planning. About that same time, I started a business, a fee only business with a CPA and a CPA JD. And what we did is that we sold succession, exit, and transition plans for a fee. And what we discovered was there was no community of advisors who knew how to collaborate. A lot of them knew what they knew, but they didn't know how to translate what they knew into what I call business owner speak, right? Entrepreneur speak. They were very good in their technical speak, and they were all saying things like, I tell clients what to do, but they're just not listening to me. So it became an idea as I started this business and found my co-collaborator, Dan Maloney, who's now emeritus, has since retired at the Association for Corporate Growth. And so all this happened in the early 2000s. And as we came together, we decided to get a space at the country club, get some food, invite a bunch of people. The number we could invite was 50 because that's all the room would hold. And we started because we were really curious about this whole what's all this new stuff about exit planning and succession and transition, and what do people mean? And what we discovered is that everyone had different definitions. Everyone was approaching it differently. And all of a sudden the light bulb went off, is that what we really needed was a learning organization where we could meet, not as a leads group, but as professionals, to take our glasses off, for those of you old enough to wear them, and pass them to the right. And every month we would meet around a room, and we would talk about succession, exit, and transition based on the specialty the person came from and what that meant to them. And so we have continually done that from the early 2000s until now. And for those of you who don't know anything about the Business Transition Council, I'll go ahead and type in the website. And you can find your way there. But what we decided was we really needed to figure out how to start talking. And when we did that, it was pretty clear that we didn't have common language or a common way of doing this, and people were coming at this very differently. So on our website, we talk a little bit about this, but we came up with some definitions of what is this that we're trying to learn about. And we saw exit planning as all of those advisors who really had a specialty or an interest in the monetization of a business. And so that covered a lot of the CPAs, a lot of the attorneys, a lot of the financial advisors, if they came from the risk management perspective, insurance perspective, or the asset management perspective, the CFP side, and of course, all the deal people, which included the business brokers and the M&A transaction people. And so they really kind of formed their own little tribe, and that tribe are really hunters, right? And those hunters are really trying to focus on an inside or an outside sale, and they're trying to get through this transaction. So they're very transaction oriented, and that's kind of how they focus. And then you have a whole nother group that really was about succession. And those were the farmers, and the farmers were willing to get in there and do the work that farmers do, which was till the soil, um, plant the seeds, water the crop, and then ultimately help harvest that crop. And by harvesting, I meant being able to take all the information that was in the head of the founders, the G1s, if you will, and all of the ways that they knew about that business, but hadn't necessarily shared with anyone, or they shared cryptically parts of it. So part of this is we started defining what this meant. And so we came up with, before you go through succession, exit, transition, you need to rest. And rest is repeatable, sustainable, scalable, and transferable. So rest planning was succession planners really trying to understand that a business was repeatable. They were going along, and even if they were making millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, they weren't able to move to the next level. And so to move to the next level, there's always one question that I love when you're getting to talk to a business owner, you get to ask. You say, hey, I've got great news for you. I've got a magic wand, and it turns out that I've got my G7 at the airport, and we're leaving tomorrow, and we're flying over to Europe, and we're going to have a place in the Greek Isles for the next month, and I want you to be my guest, and you just have to be ready tomorrow at the airport at 8 a.m. We're taking off, and just leave your phone behind. We want you and your spouse, your significant other, or your wife to come, and at all expenses paid, I want to spend some time and show you Greece. And then I would just wait and look. What do you think the look was on their face?
I can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sheer terror.
Yeah.
And that's when you go from repeatable to sustainable, right? And all of those things that have to be done, right? Of getting information out and then identifying, teaching, and documenting what that is, where you get real value in a business, isn't at peace. And that's really where succession planning really kind of comes together, is helping without regard to any specific task or any defined piece, like we are going to exit in a period of time, just to be able to grow the business in a way that's valuable so that everyone is on the same page. That means the COO, the CFO, the chief marketing officer, the chairman of the board. And so often our G1s, our founders, can't even imagine what it would be like to be chairman of the board. And
Mhm.
that's when we start moving to transition planning, because transition planning is all about seller's remorse. How many people here have actually worked with family businesses, worked with them, had them go through a sale, only to find that 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, they're calling you up and they're dissatisfied, they're unhappy. The isms of life have crept into their life. As a boomer, I refer to that affectionately as sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But what I'm talking about, the buying of racehorses, the buying of boats, the changing of life partners, divorce, marriage, affairs, buying airplanes, finding out that you have children or brothers and sisters who have been part of this group having real problems in their life with any of the isms of addiction. And that could be, gambling, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, or any series of things. So as we defined what was going on inside our group, curiously, as we're trading it around, we really kind of broke this into succession, exit, and transition tribes. And through that, we kind of take time talking about all those. But what we found was no one person, without regard to how bright they were, how knowledgeable they were, or how experienced they were, really was very good at all three. And so what became really apparent is that we had to figure out how to collaborate. And you know what people say about collaboration?
I don't.
You go first.
No, I was saying that I would love to hear what people say from your perspective.
Oh, yeah. What they say is you go
You go
first,
first,
right?
All right, got it, got it,
you,
got
you, you go you go you go first.
Figure
Oh,
it
I
out,
love to
Kendall.
collaborate.
it.
Yeah, I love to collaborate. And so one of the questions that you alluded to earlier, and one of the things that's important about this conversation, I don't want to take us off track here, is that when we started the Business Transition Council, we had to figure out who's going to make a good member, right? And one of my three things, and I know you're going to ask me this question later on, so we can talk about it deeper, is hubris. And, what you find is that people who are full of themselves and need to have the hubris beat out of them do not make good collaborators. And they self identify because they're the ones who love to be the lone wolf.
Mhm.
And any conversation you have, they reply with, but, because they have their own mental model that's a little bit more rigid, that they believe is that they're absolutely right. And collaboration requires some humility to say, let me roll that idea around a little bit, because I need to kind of see, as a boomer would say, where you're coming from, right? What does that really mean? How do I integrate that? And matter of fact, the more that you're hearing those things that are outside of your world, and the more you're getting that professional, uncomfortable feeling, the closer you're getting to being able to collaborate, right?
Mhm.
Mm.
So, with that background, we started back in the early 2000s. We're meeting today. We do 11 virtual meetings a year. We have members all over the country. Um, because we are open and identified as an open forum, I'm a CEXP, I'm a certified succession planner. I may even go and work on some of the SEPA. All the different designations approach this differently. I happen to be a big fan of the CSP because of its broadness and its collaborative nature of pulling the matrix together from a lot of different perspectives and allow you to pull all of the components together. Um, but we have members from all of those different designations, plus all the different types of attorneys, plus the psychologists, the transition specialists, plus the business brokers, plus the M&A people, plus the business consultants who come from a variety of stripes of what they're able to do, people who are specialists in corporate benefits and retirement plans and HR and key person and deferred compensation, and all of these specialties kind of come together to meet in this group. So we meet monthly, virtually. We 4 times a year we get together for quote an educational symposium, and then we have 4 what I call friend raisers, where we get together the old-fashioned way, and I buy everyone, not I, we, the BTC buys everyone a glass of wine and charcuterie and some vegetables and some fruit, and we get to catch up in person. So if someone's interested in learning more about that, they can go to the website and learn more. So was I able to answer that question in a period of time that made sense for you?
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember we sorry, I'm gonna well we joined your one of your meetings, Kendall and I, and one thing I liked is that you guys are really switched on. It's a good collaborative group. It feels like you guys really understand each other. You've been working together for a while. I was just sorry to cut you off, Kendall. I'm just curious, what do you think makes it like? Are there specific things you guys do when you're collaborating that sort of is like a key to success? To like kind of a guiding principle, like if you're gonna like if I'm an
Yeah,
introducing client, yeah.
here's what I would say. You got to start with the end in mind. And so our group works by referral.
Mhm.
The first thing I say to someone when they start showing some interest in being part of this is I say, culturally, you never want to show up ever under any circumstances, even if you're thinking it. A good lead for me is.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing that I'm trying to determine, not by what a person says, it's not talking the talk, it's walking the walk, is
Yep.
do you have a servant's heart? Because this requires a collaborative team and you have to have the client as your best interest. We refer to that as being a good steward or being a fiduciary, and all of us have different definitions that we come from. But that really is the common thing. Is your driving thing when you wake up in the morning and you're dealing with an entrepreneur, family business owner, that you want to make their life better, and you're gonna be able to measure success by that matrix, not by what it does for you.
Mhm. Cool.
2, have you been infected with the curiosity and collaborative gene? If you were a person that every time you want to go somewhere, you're picking up the phone or you're gathering a group, and you find that you don't wander around places by yourself, but you always have other people with you. And before you make a decision, you get 3 or 4 or 5 other people's input and advice, right? Um, you're on the way to being a collaborative person. You've been infected with that, and that's where you kind of get joy as compared to the person who loves to be left alone and really wants to figure it out for themselves and do it themselves. So we look for the self-examination conversations. Is that who you are? Do you prefer to be on a team as compared to be alone? And then the last thing is, uh, have you had the hubris beat out of you? And I say that only because 20-year-olds typically don't show up as members. They're typically somewhere in their 30s with, 10 years of experience or more. And many of our members are in their 40s and 50s. And of course, we have those who are now 50s, 60s, and 70s, because we've been at this for, almost 20 years now. But to find a good collaborator starts with the end in mind and screening who you're kind of letting into these conversations
Mm.
and then working with them. Okay. One of the things I do as co-founder and president is I reach out to all of them and I start with a question: how can we help you become more effective at building your business through collaborating with other members of the Business Transition Council? That's why we have an open website. The whole world can see it. Here's who we are, here's what we know. But just because you have a specialty, if you don't know where you fit in, you know, Kendall, Joe, did either of you build models of any type when you were younger?
I was a Lego kid.
Okay.
Still as an
So
adult, big child.
yeah. So if you built any of those, or you got a one of those kits that was the experimental kit for chemistry, right? Any of these things that had multiple pieces, what you soon discovered, either on your own or with the help of someone, is that it matters about your process, right? Visionaries fight process. I happen to be one of those visionaries, and I surround myself with people who rein me in all the time. And I know that when I stay on a process and procedure, I'm very effective. When I don't, it feels fantastic and I get to go off in all directions, but I got to get brought back. And in collaboration, that's what you discover. So you've got to be looking for those cues. So when I call members, that's what I'm looking for. What can you tell me about what you're doing? Tell me a little bit about how you've tried to collaborate. What do you think is happening there? What do you think may be going off the rails? How can we help you? Let's talk about that. And who can I introduce you to? And let me foster that meeting. If we're local, let's get together and have a tea, a coffee, a lunch, or cocktails, and talk about networking collectively on what that means. If not, then let's get on a call like this and talk through one, two, or three ways the two or three of us or four of us could actually practice something collaboratively, right? That allows us to go to the next step. This process of succession, exit, and transition, and this succession umbrella is an elephant. Not only do you have real business problems, a good analogy is everyone knows a realtor, right? And when a realtor comes and meets with someone, they usually come to the building that they're going to sell or the home. What are they doing when they get there?
Thing
They do
around.
a walkthrough, they look around, they observe, because the person living in that building or that house doesn't necessarily see their home through the eyes of the person the realtor has to talk to, which is a buyer.
Mhm.
So they have to go through and they have to politely, gently point out why that house or that commercial building may need some TLC. And that TLC is going to cost something, right? And it's going to cost something to get it to a condition that we're willing to go to the market to have the market decide what we're doing, right? So collaboration is the same way. When we start working together, we have to figure out how we can, without telling someone their baby is ugly, point to those areas that we can start working on. And it's probably not best to start with the most painful piece.
Mm.
Human beings work best when they have 31-minute meetings, not one 30-minute meeting. And in collaborating with clients, you have to start slow, listen, and see if you can find what I call a clear future. And that is the agreement to do at least something, right? The 5-minute rule. Let's get started with just something to get going.
Mhm.
So when I'm trying to walk the walk or teach collaboration, you've been on the calls, you see how I'm guiding the calls, but in person, I try to do the same thing. I'm not looking to solve all of the problems and maybe not even the major problem. I'm trying to get some collaboration or some consensus on a clear future for our next step. And if I can get those advisors and the business owner or the family business, because sometimes you're doing this in a family meeting, and I've had someone where the owner wants you to show up, wants to meet off site, and doesn't want anyone to know what's going on. And other times you show up to talk, to quote, you think the business owner, and they've got children and in-laws here, right? Tell us about this. And so you never know what you're walking into. And when you walk into this, you don't know where all the landmines are. The landmines are psychological, they're familial, right? Blood is thicker than water. We can't say your son or daughter or your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law definitely needs to be out of here sooner rather than later. They may come to that conclusion, but we can't start there. So I start collaboration. You asked me with the process that we're using. I'm looking for small little incremental pieces where I can get collection. The other thing that I do that Joe, Kendall, you've heard me say this before, and I know that people look at me with a very funny look when I say this, but when I am working collaboratively with people, I have a mental image of myself. What do you think I'm doing of the mental image of myself when I'm going to try to do anything collectively?
I have no idea.
Joe,
I got nothing.
I see myself standing up, looking directly at the person with my arms wide open, my legs spread shoulder width apart, and I am open from where? From my heart, from my gut, from my solar plexus. That's the mental, physical position I'm in. Why do you think I do that?
If open visual creates open intent, and open intent creates open action.
Kendall, we need to make you a psychologist. You're absolutely spot on. That little tip changed everything when I finally learned it. If you want people to collaborate, you can't say, oh, I want to collaborate. Oh, I have good intentions. You have to start physically and you have to mentally have that physical piece. And any chance you get to embody that when you're in person with someone helps guide the path. And so without giving you a 2 hour answer, which I can, did I cover enough of the pieces to talk a little bit about how this collaboration starts? Now, I've worked with both of you in many conversations many times.
Mhm.
Have I walked the walk or am I just talking the talk when I've worked with you guys in terms of how we work at BTC and work with the Rawls group or work with the ISPA?
Yeah, you definitely walk the walk, and you're a purposeful connector,
Yeah.
which I think is, I mean, to your point, if you're going to collaborate on something big, then you have to start on something small.
Yep.
And I think that's, you act as a great example, and your intent, you're putting into practice from the small to make the opportunity, create the opportunity for the big opportunities. I'm going to say opportunity again one more time.
Well, it's a good
The
opportunity.
other,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the other piece of this, and people can sense this, is you have to be genuinely curious. And not everyone is genuinely curious. And so if you find that you're not genuinely curious and you go, well, Michael, I'm not genuinely curious. How do I fix that? I say start again with something small and start with something in your own personal life that you're curious about and observe yourself in that moment of being curious. For some, it's gardening.
Mhm.
For others, it's watching a sitcom, but there's something that's pulling you in that may not be a person that you're curious about. And once you can start sensing what that feels like when you're in the presence of others, especially if you're a professional, you're trying to cultivate your curiousness. What's one of the key components that you're curious about someone when you're doing one thing and
Mhm.
it's clear to them that you're curious? What are you doing?
Asking questions. I'm getting an A+.
Yeah, you're crushing it. But also, like, I think what you're talking about, Michael, too, is there's just being curious and having sort of intention for trying to find that business, right? Like being really just curious for the sake of being curious and finding that connection, finding that fit, and just finding something that you can jive with somebody about, right? I mean, just even just you and I, well, the three of us have talked about different things. Let's try this. Let's do this. Let's just get involved in some way. See if we like each other. See if it makes sense, right? And then you go, okay, if that works, we'll try something else. But just being, like you said, open and curious, but not going, where's the money? Where's the business? Where's the deal? Right. I think a lot of times people get nervous about collaborating because people are always asking. That's why I like the idea. Don't ask for referrals, ask for introductions. I don't know if I'm going to do business with somebody, but I will know if it makes sense for me to talk to somebody, and if it makes sense for us to eventually talk about something else. So I like that process. I like that approach with what you guys are doing with collaboration.
Absolutely.
Asking
And,
for-
and by being curious from a business owner perspective, in the sense of really wanting to deeply know what is their goals, what motivates them behind that goals. That curiosity turns more into a relationship building discussion versus them feeling as though you're selling them something.
Yeah.
Because no one really wants to be sold something, even if you're not a business owner. Then take it to a business owner perspective, depending upon how big that is. They're getting a ton of people calling them all the time trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
And so just saying, I really just want to know what motivates you, what your goals are. And to your point, Joe, this process is more about us getting to know each other to see if it's a good fit. There's no pressure here for us to work together. I can be a resource for you for as long as, as long as needed. So please feel free to call me and reach out to me with questions, because this is part of the process of seeing it for a good fit.
Yeah.
A couple points just pop up. One, you have to be listening and not talking. Two, the matrix starts with what? Business owner motivation. And the reason it starts with that is the beginning of the yellow brick road to figure out what the journey is for them. And then three, you really have to get in there and understand very collectively where they're trying to go. And what you'll find is people only invest in that which they help create. So you giving the information or telling someone what to do is of zero value. What's of great value are asking questions and being curious about their answers, and then following what that mental model or their yellow brick road looks like. So you can then engage with them at a deep enough level to help them move forward through that process, right? That becomes the key to making that work.
Yeah. And just to, we have probably time for one more question. And you had mentioned the matrix. You had mentioned
Yes.
owner motivation and perspective, and you've been CSPs for about 10 years. I think you went through the program.
Yes, I think I'm trying to remember. I think I had already started business exit planners and had already started uh, the process of the business transition council when I first met the Rawls group, and I first came across it as you were talking about the ISPA and the certified succession planning designation. So I was immediately drawn to that and went through those classes. And of course, then we did it on paper, we did it in person, and I found it very, very, very valuable. But that I think was 2011 or 12 or somewhere along, and that, as I remember. So that, yeah, a little over 10 years ago, I think is accurate.
Yeah. And how has over the last 10 years, I mean, it was 10 years ago, we did the in-person, we interacted a lot. We had the development of the ISPA went on a pause for a minute. But during that time, you were using that information, and you were practicing with that knowledge, and you were leveraging the concept of the matrix and the philosophy of it. Now that we've now took that program online. So I'm just curious, how had that changed your perspective of the succession transition process, or did it confirm your perspective? I guess just how has that impacted your practice over the last 10 years, and how you interact with business owners, and also how you pull together that advisory team and the business transition council?
Well, it's you're kind of asking the question of a fish, what they think of water. At this point, I can't really differentiate the two between what I've learned and what I've become. I would not have become who I am without the training I got through the CSP. It molded my thinking process. And then as I worked through those conversations, I can tell you it helped me feel a little bit more bold. I remember the first time I had a family meeting. I'm not trained as a psychologist. I'm not a sociologist. Yes, I was a teacher and I have been licensed in insurance and securities and gone down that path, but I had never kind of waded into that. But it's one of those things that once you go through that process, you realize, what does family governance mean? And what do you do when you walk in and you think you're walking into the shallow end of the pool and all of a sudden a thunderstorm breaks out, right? So at this point, trying to tell you what I learned and didn't learn, all I can tell you is that the CSP, and I love the new way it's online. I think it really is a superior tool and product. And I love the way you've built the succession planning uh, analytic, the analyzer, the SPA as a collective way to walk through a conversation and gather all the data as shallow or as deep as you like as you go through it. And then that tool allows you through the process of what you've done to then have talking points to go back to. I think the greatest challenge people have in starting this conversation is, okay, I feel pretty good about talking about some of this stuff, but how in the world do I collect this data and do something with it? And the succession planning assessment does that for you. So I can say positive things about that, having gone through that and look at that and answered those questions. Um, the other thing I could say about the designation is that you then get access to a whole set of, now what do I do? What's next? How do you take the practice you're in? If you're currently an attorney, if you're currently a CPA, if you're currently a psychologist, if you're currently a business broker, if you're currently a business consultant, wherever you're sitting in the succession, exit, and transition process, there are now tools to help you integrate that and go forward. One of the reasons the Business Transition Council was built the way it was as a non-for-profit, people are like, well, why people always they always ask the same question. What's in it for you?
Mhm.
How are you making any money at this? I said, I'm not making money. I finally got to the point where I no longer spend money on building a community. I now have a community that supports our website and these conversations. But what you'll find is to really do this work, you're going to have to collaborate. You're going to have to expand, and you want people from all the different places to do that. For those of you who are in different parts of the country, who go to the website and like it, we have members who've joined. If you say, I really like to learn more about that, and you are in some state, pick a state, Wyoming, and you're out there and you've become a CSP, and you say, how do I form a group here? And the state I live in, I'm glad to help you figure out how to find your tribe of people to do that. And then you could, tap into us for virtual meetings. But anyone who is not currently a CSP, who's observing or watching this and is curious, I would suggest to them that this is an incredible investment in your time and that you're going to come out with a whole lot more confidence of what you're really good at and being able to identify what you're good at and how to integrate that into whatever your practice is. And you guys have done an excellent job um, of showing people not only this is what you need to know, but this is how you implement each piece to bring success for the business owner and the entrepreneur who ultimately you're all trying to serve.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michael, for your time today and participating as a member of the ISPA, your graciousness and of allowing us to participate in BTC. And I think the world is a better place because you're in it. So
Absolutely.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. And if you decide that you'd like to have a few more of these, I know that we touched on just 2 or 3 of the questions, and you probably sent me 25. I'm glad to spend time and discuss any of these topics. All right.
Awesome.
Excellent. And
Excellent.
for everyone who joined, please check out the Business Transition Council. It's an incredible group of collaborative advisors, and there's a lot of groups out there that say they're like that, but Michael is incredibly purposeful in cultivating that culture. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.